Pixar's brand new animated feature, Turning Red, premieres exclusively on Disney Plus Hotstar on March the 11th. Now, we had the chance to sit down with some of the incredible minds that made this movie happen. In this interview, I speak to Danielle Feinberg, the visual effects supervisor on Turning Red, about how Pixar keeps pushing the envelope in making these incredible animated worlds happen. Check it out.
Let's go.
So before we get into it, talk to me a little bit about what a VFX supervisor does in animation.
Okay. In some ways, I would say I'm like the glue that's holding everything, all the departments together. And in some ways, I may be the oil that's greasing the wheels of the machine in some ways. And so
I feel like you've got this metaphor down.
I don't know. We'll see if I can keep it going. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just keep it going.
You know, I think in a lot of ways, part of the job is, especially sort of as it happened on Red, was making sure that people have the technology and the tools to do what they need to do. And so sometimes that might be if there's a ton of simulation on a movie, that their tools move fast enough that they can do the simulation. But some of it is, we're trying to do this new thing, and so we need new technology to be able to do this. But ultimately, it's always about each department being able to do the movie to the best they can for their department and making sure that they have the technology or the speed or whatever it may be specific to that movie. And then the other part of it, I feel like, is making sure that all the departments are kind of talking to each other and collaborating, because it can be very easy to go into your corner and do your thing in your department and hand it off to the next department. And so some big piece of it was about, I believe anyways, to make the best movie possible, people collaborating and coordinating on all these things is huge. And for people to understand what Domee's thinking and to be able to ask her questions, and making sure that, especially over Zoom, where it's really easy to just go kind of quiet and you're sitting in the meeting and you're not participating, kind of pulling that out of people and making sure that, this department could help that department, or if this was an unknown, then we could get an answer to that, and sort of coordinating all those things. And so trying to build this very collaborative space, even though most of it was over Zoom, and making sure people had the tools and the speed to sort of bring their best to whatever they were doing.
Right. You said something just there. Every time we speak to someone from Disney Animation, they use the phrase running into each other. It's like a big thing. Like,
Really?
Even when I was speaking to the Encanto guys a few months ago, they were talking about how during the pandemic, one of the biggest issues they had was that they never got a chance to run into each other.
Yeah.
And can you talk to me about that? Because it seems like a crucial element in animation filmmaking.
It's so funny, isn't it? There's so much stuff. And this was actually probably the biggest thing about pandemic in some ways, is there's the thing where you're walking to lunch, or you're ending up where most people eat lunch in this communal area at PIXAR, and you see this person, you go, oh, hey, I've been meaning to ask you blah, blah, blah. Or this thing happened, Domee asked for this thing this morning. Did you know about that? And that disappeared. Like you couldn't do that anymore, because otherwise you were in Zoom calls, or you didn't run into people in the same way. And so you had to find ways to kind of, you had to find different ways to do that, or different ways to find the efficiencies and kind of up your communication level. That made the sort of pandemic of it kind of an interesting problem.
Very cool. You were talking about technology, and I think the thing that always blows my mind about what Pixar does is how you're constantly inventing things with every film. And so how does that work? Like, so just say an animator is doing something, do they pop in and go, hey, this thing doesn't exist yet, but we need you to make it happen? And then, like, what happens after that?
It can happen in all kinds of ways. There's some element of like, the directors and story artists, they can come up with whatever they want. And then, and then the people involved with technical are like, oh, we don't know how to do that. How are we going to do that? And try, but you don't say, no, we can't do that. Like, that hardly ever happens here. It's such this spirit of like, okay, let's go figure out how to do it. But it's always driven by, the crazy worlds and stories that the story people dream up. And so, which is actually a really fun way to drive technology, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also constantly being refined, right? I remember watching that opening sequence of Toy Story 4 and the rain.
right?
goosebumps as I
Yeah.
was watching that,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And so, I mean, with that in mind, if you don't mind a philosophical question, I think more so than any other kind of filmmaking as well, every movie that comes next is a product of what you've done before, from
Absolutely.
Toy
Yeah.
Story in 1993 all
Yep.
the way to now.
Absolutely.
What is that like? What does that speak to? Like, I'm assuming it creates a very unique environment in Pixar because you're constantly building off the work of others.
We have this interesting history of being kind of at the beginning of computer animation as it showed up in short films and then feature films. And kind of as we broke down the barriers as we went, we can't do hair, we can't do underwater, we can't do long hair, we can't do huge crowds, all of these things. And
then someone comes along and goes, "Hey, I'm making this whole movie and it's set underwater.
And we're going to figure it out." And so you get this progression. And I think one of the things that was really interesting for me on this film was, with Domee having a very different take on things, I found myself thinking, but that's not how we do things in a couple different facets, right? Like in lighting, we don't do that. And then I would go, "Oh, wait, you got to stop thinking that way. Like that's old. Like you couldn't do that before because you didn't have all these other capabilities, but okay, let's think about things in a different way." And so it's really cool to have this mix of kind of people that have been here for a long time and have built up over time and have all of this knowledge about why things are the way they are and what we've gone through. And then you have all these people like Domee or students that are coming in fresh right now, and you get this really great influx of ideas and different ways of doing things. And so it's that diversity of thought that I think we're getting now that is leading to some of this really most interesting stuff that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, whenever they're talking about Pixar, always talk about how, it's so like story drives everything. But I think, it doesn't work without the technology, not in the same way.
Yeah.
And just talking about, like, from a VFX point of view, what is the thing that you haven't cracked yet? Like, what's the next big hurdle? Like, you've got the hair down, you've got the rain and the water down.
I know.
It looks amazing. Yeah, what is that next big thing? Or what are you, like, if you can talk about it, what are you working on now that has you pulling your hair out?
You know what? It's so hard for me because it's, it used to be these really specific things of like, well, we can't do long hair, say. And then it's been about putting sort of more on screen. Could we do big crowds? Could we do like the Land of the Dead in Coco? Even in the middle of Coco felt undoable. And then we figure out how to do it. That's so complex and it has millions of lights in it and all these things. In some ways, it feels like we could make anything that anyone could dream up. But I'll knock on wood while I say that, because as soon as I get onto the next film, they're going to come up with something that we go, how on earth are we going to do that? And I think that's a great place to be. If it was just comfortable and we knew how to do stuff, I don't think it would be as interesting, or we wouldn't push ourselves as much. And so I don't know what the next thing is, but we're sure to find it on every single movie. They push us in a new direction. So
I was going to say, I'm sure I'll find out on the next one. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and congratulations on Turning Red. From the little bit of it that they let us watch, it looks amazing, and I can't wait to see the whole thing.
Right on. Thank you. It was great fun to talk to you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm calm. Zen. Yes! No!
That was Danielle Feinberg, the visual effects supervisor on Turning Red. You can watch it on Disney Plus Hotstar on March the 11th. Don't forget to check out our other YouTube interviews. Also, like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, tell your family. You know what to do.